A lonely mountain man discovered a blonde woman hanging from the rafters, with Apache's lover branded on her. The wind came down from the high ridges of the Sierra Madre like a whispering ghost, carrying with it the pine-scented chill of late autumn. Ezekiel Hart, known only as Zeke to the few who had ever bothered to remember his name, leaned on the worn stock of his rifle as he watched a hawk wheel against the gray sky. The world was wide, empty, and lonely up here, just the way he liked it. Zeke hadn't spoken to another soul in weeks. He had no need for townsfolk and their gossip, no patience for card games and whiskey that led to fights, no use for women who measured a man by the size of his coin purse. He lived by trapping, hunting, and the rough shelter of a log cabin tucked deep among granite cliffs and pine. Solitude had become his armor. But solitude doesn't last forever. Fate has a way of dragging a man back into the affairs of others. He was scouting along an abandoned logging trail when he noticed it, the shape of a weather-beaten barn, half collapsed, tucked in a hollow where the grass had grown tall. Its roof sagged, timbers blackened by storms. Something about it caught his eye, something more than ruin. There was movement. At first he thought it a trick of the shadows. Then he saw her. A body, pale against the darkness, swayed from the rafters. Zeke's heart, usually steady as a stone, jolted hard in his chest. He broke into a run, boots crunching frost-bitten grass, his rifle clattering against his back. Pushing through the sagging doorway, he found himself staring up at the figure. A woman. Blonde hair, matted but still golden even in the dim light, hung loose over her shoulders. Her face was slack, lips bluish, yet her chest, by some miracle, still rose faintly. A rope dug into her neck, the knot cruel and tight. Zeke's hands didn't hesitate. With his hunting knife, he slashed the rope and caught her weight before she hit the dirt. She was light, frighteningly so, all bones and fever-warm skin beneath the thin shift she wore. He laid her gently on the floorboards and pressed his ear against her lips. A breath, shallow but real. "Easy now," he muttered, his own voice hoarse from disuse. "You ain't gone yet." As he shifted her, his eyes caught something that made his gut clench. Burned into the flesh of her shoulder, scarred deep and raw, were the words, "Apache lover." The letters were cruelly branded, each stroke deliberate, a mark meant to shame for life. Zeke's jaw hardened. He had seen cattle branded. He had never seen a woman treated worse than stock. She stirred faintly under his touch, a broken sound slipping from her throat. Her eyes fluttered open, wide, blue, haunted. They fixed on him, but not with trust. With terror. Don't take me back," she whispered, voice cracked and rasping. Zeke shook his head. "Ain't taking you nowhere. You're safe now." But she didn't seem to believe him. Her hands tried to push weakly against him, as if every man was a danger. Zeke simply wrapped his old buffalo hide around her trembling frame and lifted her as if she were nothing more than a child. He carried her out into the pale light of afternoon, away from the stench of dust and rot inside the barn. She shivered against him, mumbling words half lost to fever. His cabin was a good 3 miles through rough country, but he didn't think twice. With steady strides, he bore her weight, listening only to the crunch of his boots and the faint sound of her breath. The cabin was rough-hewn but sturdy, built with his own hands. A fire burned low in the stone hearth, its coals red and waiting. Zeke laid the woman on his bunk, covered her with wool blankets, and went about the work of keeping her alive. He boiled water, crushed herbs he'd gathered, willow bark for pain, yarrow for fever. With careful fingers, he washed the burn on her shoulder, though the sight of it made his blood boil. Whoever had done this had meant to kill her soul even if her body lived. When she cried out at his touch, He spoke softly, the way a man might soothe a spooked horse. "You're safe here, ma'am. No one's gonna hurt you while I'm breathin'." For a long time she drifted in and out of consciousness. Zeke kept watch. He listened to the wind outside, to the lonely call of a wolf far off, and wondered what story lay behind that brand. By nightfall she managed to speak again. Her voice was weak, but the words cut sharp. "They said I betrayed my kind, that I lay with savages, that I deserved death." Zeke stared into the fire, jaw tight. He'd lived long enough to know the hatred that festered in men's hearts. The frontier was a cruel place, more cruel to women than most. "What's your name?" he asked at last. She swallowed, eyes glassy. "Clara." He nodded slowly. "Well, Clara, you're alive now. And as long as I'm here, that's how it's gonna stay." For the first time since he'd found her, her lips trembled not from fear but something like hope. She closed her eyes and let herself sink into the warmth of the blankets. Zeke sat by the fire, rifle across his knees, watching the shadows move on the cabin walls. The lonely mountain man had never asked for company. But now he had it, a fragile, broken soul dropped into his care. And he knew the men who had branded her, left her hanging to die, would not be far behind. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of firelight, whispered words, and slow healing. Clara drifted between fever and restless sleep, while Zeke kept watch like a sentry guarding some fragile treasure. He boiled broths of rabbit and wild onion, pressed cool cloths against her brow, and spoke in his gravel-rough voice just enough so she'd know she wasn't alone. Each night, when the wind pressed against the cabin walls, she startled awake, clutching at the blankets with panic in her eyes. Zeke would lean close, his shadow steady, his words steady. "You're not there any more," he'd tell her. "Ain't no rope. Ain't no crowd. Just me and these mountains." And slowly, her breathing would ease. One evening, when her fever had finally broken, Clara spoke more than a few scattered words. Her voice was hoarse, but behind it lay years of sorrow. "They hated me because I loved him." Zeke said nothing, waiting. "His name was Nantan. Apache. Brave, gentle. He saved me when my wagon broke crossing the flats. He carried me to his people when I was half dead. I should have feared him, but I didn't. I belonged with him more than I ever did among my own." Her blue eyes searched Zeke's face, bracing for judgment. She found none. "They caught us together," she whispered. "Dragged me back to town. They said I was unclean, a traitor to my blood. They branded me so none would forget. Then the rope." Her voice broke, and she turned away, ashamed of her own truth. Zeke stirred the fire, jaw tight. He had no love for townsfolk. They were quick to call themselves righteous while spilling cruelty thicker than blood. He looked at Clara, fragile but fierce in her honesty, and felt something stir in him he thought long dead, the will to stand beside another soul. "You loved a man, Clara. That ain't no crime," he said finally. The crime was theirs, for tryin' to kill what they didn't understand. She blinked, tears sliding silently down her cheek. No one had ever said those words to her. But peace on the frontier was short-lived. On the third morning, as dawn painted the ridges in pale gold, Zeke's hound, an old mutt that rarely barked, growled low outside the cabin. Zeke rose instantly, rifle in hand. Clara sat up, alarm flashing in her eyes. Through the cracks of the cabin shutters, Zeke saw them, 3 men on horseback, rifles slung casual across their saddles, faces hard with a look of lawless judgment. One shouted, voice carrying cold across the clearing. "Mountain man! We know she's in there. Hand over the whore, or you'll hang right beside her." Clara's breath caught. Her hands trembled. "It's them. The ones who—" Zeke touched her shoulder, steady and sure. Stay low. Don't make a sound. He stepped to the door, swinging it open with deliberate calm. The mountain air bit sharp against his skin, but his rifle stayed steady in his hands. "Morning, boys," he called. His voice carried the weight of stone. "Don't reckon you'll be talking anyone from my cabin today." The leader spat into the dirt. "She's marked. Apache's whore. You shield her, you share her sentence." Zeke's eyes narrowed. For years he'd avoided men, avoided their cruelty, avoided the blood that came when pride met violence. But now Clara's terrified face burned in his mind. "She's under my roof," he said evenly. "And that means she's under my protection." For a moment, silence stretched like a drawn bowstring. Then the leader snarled and jerked his rifle. The crack of Zeke's shot split the air. The leader tumbled from his saddle before his rifle cleared the stock. The other two wheeled their horses, shouting curses, bullets biting bark from the pines. Zeke moved with the calm of long habit, chambering and firing, each shot measured. One horse screamed as a bullet clipped its flank, sending its rider sprawling. The last man fled, spurring his horse hard down the trail. When silence fell again, only the echo of gunfire remained. Zeke stood motionless, rifle smoking, eyes hard. Inside the cabin, Clara sobbed quietly, torn between relief and guilt. When Zeke returned, she reached for his arm, her voice shaking. "They'll send more. They'll never stop." Zeke crouched beside her, his rough hand covering hers. "Then let him come. I've been alone a long time, Clara. Got nothing to lose. Until now." Her gaze lifted, startled, meeting his steady eyes. For the first time, she saw not just a rescuer, but a man who had chosen her, scars, brand, and all. The weeks passed, and the snows came down heavy on the ridges. The world shrank to firelight and the quiet rhythm of two people learning to live side by side. Clara's strength returned, the hollows in her cheeks softened, her eyes grew clear. She learned the ways of the mountains, how to set snares, how to split logs, how to listen for the shift of weather in the silence of the trees. Sometimes, when the fire was low, Zeke would catch her humming a tune from her childhood. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her with a look that made her blush despite the mark burned into her shoulder. One night, as the wind howled outside, she touched his hand by the hearth. "You saved me," she whispered. "Not just from the rope. From myself. I thought I was broken beyond mending." Zeke turned his rough palm to hers, holding it gently. "World tried to break me too. Guess maybe we mend each other." The words were plain, but the weight behind them was more than either had spoken before. She leaned against him, and for the first time in months, perhaps years, Clara felt safe enough to dream. Spring would come, and with it new dangers. But for now, in the heart of winter, a lonely mountain man and a scarred woman had found something rarer than gold in the wilderness. They had found each other.